Your consciousness doesn't live in your brain. Have you ever had a gut feeling that was just dead on? Or a wild dream that felt more real than your own life? What about one of those lightning bolt ideas that shows up fully formed, like it was just delivered to you? We're all taught that these moments, every single thought, feeling, and experience we have, are cooked up by the 3 pounds of wetware between our ears. That the brain, with its billions of neurons firing away, is the sole creator of our entire inner world. But what if that isn't the whole story? What if it's not even the most interesting part of the story? What if your brain isn't the creator of your consciousness, but the receiver of it? Section 1. The Fortress of the Skull. Now let's be clear. The dominant view in science, for very good reason, is that consciousness is something the brain makes. It's a biological process, like digestion or breathing. The idea is that if you get enough neurons, wire them up in a crazy complex network, and let them rip, consciousness just emerges. It's a product, manufactured inside the fortress of your skull. That's the bedrock of mainstream neuroscience. And there is a mountain of evidence to back this up. We know that physical damage to the brain can completely change who you are. Tragic neurodegenerative diseases can erase a person's identity. Specific chemicals can trigger hallucinations, and neurosurgeons can spark vivid memories just by stimulating a few cells with an electrode. From this perspective, consciousness is just what the brain does. The brain creates the mind, the same way a computer's hardware runs its software. The love you have for your family, the awe you feel watching a sunset, the very feeling that you are you. It's all believed to be the result of intricate electrochemical signals. For most scientists, the case is pretty much closed. The ghost isn't in the machine. The ghost is the machine. But if that's true, we're left with the single hardest question in all of science. Section 2. The ghost in the machine. It's called the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. And it goes something like this. We can map the brain. We can trace every neural pathway and every chemical reaction. Science is getting amazing at what Chalmers calls the easy problems, explaining how the brain processes data, controls behavior, and focuses attention. But why should any of that feel like anything from the inside? Why isn't it all just dark, unfeeling computation? Why does your brain processing light at a 700 nanometer wavelength produce the private, subjective experience of seeing the color red? There is still no definitive, testable theory that explains how physical brain activity becomes subjective feeling. This isn't just a tiny gap in our knowledge, it's a canyon. We can explain what the brain does, but we have no solid explanation for what it is to be a conscious being. This lack of a complete explanation doesn't disprove the mainstream view, of course, but it does crack the door open to asking bigger and, frankly, weirder questions. It forces us to wonder if maybe we're looking at the problem from the wrong direction entirely. If the brain as creator model can't quite explain the existence of our inner world, what else is there? What if the brain isn't a factory, but an antenna? Section 3. The brain as a radio receiver. This brings us to a radical, ancient idea that a handful of modern philosophers and scientists are starting to look at again. The theory that consciousness might exist outside the brain, and the brain is just a tuner. Let's be crystal clear. This is a speculative, philosophical hypothesis, not supported by mainstream neuroscience. But the analogy is a powerful one. Think of a radio. A radio doesn't create the music. The music is already out there, an invisible electromagnetic wave broadcast across the air. The radio's only job is to tune into a frequency, filter out the static, and translate that signal into sound. If you smash the radio, the music stops. But you haven't destroyed the broadcast. You've just broken the receiver. This idea, often called the filter theory, was floated in the modern era by the brilliant psychologist William James over a century ago, and was later picked up by author Aldous Huxley. They proposed that the brain's main job might not be to produce consciousness, but to limit it, to take a vast, universal field of consciousness and funnel it into the focused beam we call me, so we can get on with the business of surviving. While this is a philosophical idea without empirical evidence for a universal consciousness, proponents point to some intriguing data. For example, some studies on deep meditation and psychedelics have found that profound, expanded states of awareness, like feelings of universal connection or ego death, can correlate with a decrease in activity in key brain hubs like the default mode network. This doesn't mean less brain activity equals more consciousness. The real picture is far more complex. But for those who favor the filter theory, it's a tantalizing clue. It suggests that when the brain's filtering mechanism is turned down, our awareness might expand, as if the radio is suddenly picking up more of the broadcast. We do know for a fact that our brains are powerful gatekeepers. Research, including work from the Max Planck Institute, has shown that our brains constantly filter the flood of sensory information pouring in from our environment to keep us from being overwhelmed. This is established science. The speculative leap taken by some is to ask, what if this known filtering mechanism applies to more than just our senses? Could the brain be filtering consciousness itself? Section 4. Whispers from the fringe. This kind of thinking has led a few researchers to the wild frontiers of science, where mind-bending theories are born. These aren't established facts, but they represent a bold attempt to tackle the hard problem. One idea is panpsychism, a view championed by philosophers like Philip Goff. Panpsychism suggests that consciousness isn't a special feature of brains. Instead, it might be a fundamental and universal property of matter, just like mass or spin. In this view, tiny particles have a very simple form of experience. Our brains don't create the light of consciousness. They act like a prism, gathering all those tiny sparks and focusing them into the brilliant rainbow of human awareness. Other speculative ideas, known as electromagnetic field theories, propose that our consciousness isn't in the neurons themselves, but in the brain's overall electromagnetic field. According to this fringe theory, this unified EM field is the actual seat of our conscious experience. Again, let's be direct. These ideas, the filter theory, panpsychism, EM field theories, are not supported by empirical evidence in the way the mainstream brain-based model is. They remain speculative and on the fringes of scientific thought. But they are serious, intellectually rigorous attempts to grapple with the mystery of our own existence and to challenge the assumption that we are nothing more than the meat inside our heads. So what's your take? After hearing all this, where do you land? Is your brain creating your reality from scratch, a lonely artist in an otherwise silent universe? Or is it tuning in to something far, far bigger? A symphony that's been playing all along? We'd genuinely love to hear what you think in the comments. Conclusion. Today, we've gone from the scientific certainty that the brain creates consciousness to the profound mystery of the hard problem that this view has yet to solve. We've explored a century-old alternative, the brain as a receiver, and dipped our toes into the speculative science pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. The final answer isn't in yet. We're all still exploring this incredible territory together. But maybe the real point is that just asking the question changes how we see ourselves. If you aren't the generator of the signal, but the one experiencing the broadcast, what song are you choosing to tune into?